We're here to talk about the leather industry, where we're heading, where we're going, and what the future holds for the leather industry in Nigeria. So I'm going to introduce the panelists. First, I'm going to start with Mrs. Nee Adeniji. Mrs. Toyin Adeniji has 25 years experience as a financial service professional in the international development, financial inclusion, strategy and business finance, small and medium-sized enterprise development. She's an alumni of the Harvard Business School. She currently serves as the executive director of executive director of micro enterprise of Bank of Industry. Sorry. You're welcome, Ma. Thank you for joining us. And I have Mrs. Femi Olaibi. She's the owner of My World of Bags, based in Ibadan, Nigeria. She's currently the leather planner, and the platform creates to showcase leather designers, create awareness and change in the narrative around the Nigeria leather industry. Mrs. Femi Olaibi is the creative director of Femi Handbags, a luxury line of leather handbags and accessories, and they stock in Lagos and in New York. You're welcome, man. I can't see you though, but I'm sure you're somewhere here. Thank you for joining us. Mr. Bimbola, I see you there. Can you see me, Mr. Bimbola? Just let me know if you're there. Mr. Bimbola is a multidisciplinary professional with 8 years multi-sectoral work experience spanning international developmental program across North and Southwestern Nigeria. Mr. Bimbola is currently the value chain advisor, Nigeria competitiveness program at. You're welcome, sir. Thank you. I can see you both now. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us, sir. You're welcome. And I have on here Mr. Wilson Erubebo. He has a decade of experience working with the focus of economic and social research, industry, research policy advocate, consulting and credit called the DFI Policy Development Facility. He currently leads the preparation of the Nigerian Economy Summit Program, Microfinance Outlook, and anchors the technical subcommittee of the Nigerian Economic Summit. You're welcome, sir. So this is my first time. I am going to be honest, this is my first time of doing this, so I am quite nervous. So please, everybody, make me feel very comfortable, just like I will do as well. You're all welcome. I do hope that you can answer some of the questions that we have. Thank you very much for joining us, and thank you for making this happen. So I'm going to start with my questions now. And my first question is going to go to Mrs. Olaibi. I hope you don't mind.
Not at all. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I'm sorry, so basically, there. Sorry for coming in late.
That's okay. So basically, I wanted to start with you because of you, all your idea. And we wanted to find out what the inspiration was for starting up the Lagos Leather Fair. What inspired you to go ahead to, start the Lagos Leather Fair? Can you just give us a brief description to how that came along?
Okay, so thank you so much, Adito. Like they say, what will go wrong, but hey, good, we're all here now. And I really would like to thank all of you here for honoring our invitation to be part of LLF Digital. Thank you so much. So I think it really all started with me thinking that there was a serious gap within the leather industry. I had been running my business since 1992, and I must say that, I mean, it sounds ancient, doesn't it? But I only really started using leather in 2010 when I had the opportunity of attending my very first international exhibition. Because, of course, of the kind of exhibition that it was, I was advised by a prominent British designer, Nigerian British designer, to use nothing but leather to produce my collection. So I was just learning, so I needed to learn everything I know about leather, and that was really my first foray into the world of leather. In order to do that, naturally, I basically had to change the way that I work, from the materials that I used to the machines that I used, to the kind of needles that I used, and the tools and everything, pretty much everything really. So what it meant, of course, was that I needed to source for leathers, and of course, I've always been big on quality. And apart from the leather, I also needed to source for really good hardware and accessories. But all I found was scraps and leftovers from probably old seasons from Europe. And so I would head to Mushima and I would just start picking up scraps, not in any great quantities. I discovered very quickly, of course, that yes, using leather did raise my profile, but it wasn't a walk in the park. And I had all these grand ideas, and I started feeling really frustrated at the challenges that kept hitting me along the way. There didn't seem to be any end in sight. But what was worse, I think, was that even those that were just starting out so many years after myself were also having the same kind of issues and challenges. So what did I do? I started doing a lot of research, started researching the leather industry, started to find out more about, especially because I knew that there were tanneries in Kano. I started to try to find out more about how the leather industry worked and how we could make it better. So I started asking a lot of questions. And so one day I decided in 2017, I actually started writing proposals, send them out to some government institutions, but I didn't really get the answers I wanted. So I decided, you know what, instead of complaining, I'll get up and do something about it. I believe very strongly that because I had gradually built a brand that was becoming a recognizable one, I could actually use my voice and be part of the solution. So I decided, okay, instead of sitting around waiting for the government to fix our problems, one of the ways in which I could bring the challenges to their notice was to create a platform which would bring together under one roof all the major players along that leather value chain, which I had studied in great detail. And so in 2017, I proceeded to take the boldest step I had ever taken. And really, I think that was it.
Great. Thank you very much for doing that. That's great. Thank you very much for doing that. You have obviously and definitely started the conversation, and we hope it carries on. Thank you. So my first question will be to Mr. Abimbola. And my question to you is, some introduction to how big the leather industry is in Nigeria. We can't hear you. I don't know if that's me.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, you're muted. Okay.
You can hear me now. Okay, great. Sorry for the background echo. I'm again in transit. I'm always in transit doing something. So in terms of the size of the market for leather goods, again, I put it in quote leather goods. What I just tell anybody is to do a bit of the back of the envelope calculation. Let's assume you have a population of what, 180 million people. Let's assume we discount that each person requires a pair of footwear, at least 3 pairs of footwear in a year, whatever you do, whatever you don't do. Let's assume everybody doesn't wear leather. A significant proportion will wear synthetics and other materials. So discount that value by give or take another 40%. And this very extremely pessimistic views. 3 pairs of footwear across 40% of 180 million people and assume that you have a per unit price of 1,500, which is extremely outrageously cheap. That gives you an index. Various bodies have quoted figures in excess of billions of dollars, estimating the size of the footwear and leather goods market in Nigeria. But we have yet to even scratch the surface of what is possible. Leather goods and leather products in terms of market size goes beyond just footwear. I'm wearing a leather jacket. Very few people wearing leather jackets in Nigeria, but it gives you an index of the sheer scale. Pundits are putting it at close to $4 billion, and I'm not exaggerating when I say that, simply because of the size of the population and their demand for this product. You have industries like vehicle manufacturing, airplane manufacturing, share gift items market. These are huge markets for leather products, but as it is in Nigeria, we're still just scratching the surface. So that gives us an index of how large the market can be.
Great, thank you very much for that. Mr. Wilson, I would like to ask you, what role does the leather industry and how does it affect the economy of Nigeria currently? Can you just explain to us?
Yes, good afternoon, and it's a pleasure to be here. Hope you can hear me.
Thank you, we can. Thank you.
Yes, so the leather industry is, quite huge. Like as the previous speaker mentioned, it's one of the key industries that we think at the NESG has the potential to lift Nigerians out of poverty. It has the potential to create jobs for the economy. And even now that we see, the fact that the global economy has been hit by the pandemic, this even tells us that as a country, we need to start, taking serious the issue of diversification. We need to look at how we can, reduce oil, particularly in terms of foreign exchange earnings, and also maybe in terms of government revenue, even though that has declined significantly in the last few months. So we've seen also that in the midst of this pandemic, countries that have been able to recover are those that, first of all, have enough fiscal buffers to withstand some of the shocks that citizens and businesses have faced. And more importantly, the second point is those countries that have been able to recover have also shown strong growth in manufacturing exports, and which part of which leather is part of. So we saw a typical example in China, for instance, where even when other economies across the world are reporting, recession, negative GDP growth, they recorded a positive growth in the second quarter of this year, basically driven by export of manufactured goods and all that. So the leather industry is really very important for our economy. Earlier in the year, we did released a report that showed that within Nigeria's manufacturing sector, we have the potential to create an additional 3 million jobs, part of which leather is a key subsector that we identified. We also identified cassava processing for industrial starch, tomato processing, and a couple of other industries. Over the years, we've seen, well, would I say some, growth, the fact that we export to, key countries, Italy and Spain. We even celebrated, if you go through the NEPC website, there's a statement there that says that we export about 70, close to % of our exports go to Italy and Spain, which is something good. But at the same time, if you look at imports from Italy, you'd notice that Nigeria's exports only make up 5% of their total imports, which tells you that we are still very insignificant as far for success for any industry. Those conditions are even met within Nigeria, in the sense that, can you hear me? Okay, in the sense that we have, okay, yeah, so in the sense that we have a situation where the raw materials are readily available within the country. We have that in abundance. We also have the fact that we have a market for leather. That in itself, because we've seen cases where even countries have to build and create markets, but this time there's a market for finished leather products within Nigeria and even outside Nigeria. So that tells, so the main issue here is basically looking at how we can, improve things like skills development, how we can also ensure that we get policies right and we provide support, and support not just in the terms of providing finances to business that operate within the industry, but we create a support structure that allows for growth across all the different, the various value chain within the leather industry. So yes, leather is very key as far as the economy is concerned, whether you're looking at job creation and whether you're looking at value addition and whether you're looking at reducing poverty and lifting millions of Nigerians out of poverty.
Great, fantastic. Mrs. Adeniji, the next question is to you, ma'am. We see that you have done a lot of work in Aba, and Aba is a very vibrant commercial sector. Can you tell us about the work done in some of the partnerships, some of the people that you've partnered with, and how that is going, ma'am?
Yes, I did.
Did you hear me?
I did. Thank you very much, and you're doing very well, by the way.
Thank you very much.
Well, I mean, at the Bank of Industry, I think we have been part of the journey for LLF, and we have, even prior to LLF, we had worked quite closely with partners like Mrs. Olaibi, to just sort of understand how the layout of the leather leather space or leather sector in Nigeria. And so I remember the first, I believe, the first outing of LLF. If I remember, the theme was connecting the dots. And Mrs. Olaibi had looked at sort of the triangle of, leather production in Nigeria, then the designers, then the I believe the manufacturers, and just sort of try to see, look, there is a triangulation and connecting that dot. And so we as part of our interest, focused on Aba at a point in time. You're very correct. And we work with the likes of Ford Foundation partners. We've also if I remember. And anyway, so we looked at that space and said, how can we sort of help take them to the next level? We know that at that space, there were more, I don't want to call them artisans because they've been in this sector for years. And obviously some of the things they make are of such excellent quality. But we felt that there was a way to even add more capacity to them and smoothen things a little bit. And so that was our foray to the urban market. And that went, I mean, you have to understand the lay of the land. We worked with, I think we had about 300 artisans that we wanted to work with, and we started in phases. So we tried to either work with them individually, or we said, look, can you do a share fee? If there's an equipment, if there's anything that'll make your product even better. And so we worked with them. But I think that's just a little bit of what we do. I think we are very, as Bank of Industry, we're very keen on tapping into that market that we've heard a lot about already by my colleagues who have tried to, I know Inka tried to sort of give us a sense of the size of that market. I think also talk a little bit about the value chain. So sort of from production of leather, where we're exporting a lot of our leather before it's finished, and now we're a net importer because we're bringing in a lot, for our use locally. So what we have done is, as I said, try to understand the lay of that space, and as much as we are called in to jump into it, to try and see how we can really expand it. So that's something we've done, even beyond the Aba artisans or or leather sector. We have looked outside of that as well. We have looked at tanneries. We have worked, as I said, closely with my world of bags to see how can we really develop again. Someone talked about job creation. How can we make sure that we develop all these pillars and really make that impact and keep, or bring some of the earnings or the
Wow.
fair. The idea is also for us to get out there. Do we support entrepreneurs? That is what we do at the Bank of Industry. That's sort of our pillar, supporting and empowering entrepreneurs. So the leather sector is no exception. By understanding the sort of the value chain, if you will, it helps us also know where and how to pitch our tent. You cannot compare the needs in this sector. Obviously, will be different from the needs of another sector, even another creative sector. And so, I know LLF is Lagos Leather Fair, but I'm sure maybe Femi can speak to that. It's not just for Lagos. It's actually it focuses on Nigeria, and so by virtue of that, we are there to pick up those connections, those linkages. And so we are willing to speak to entrepreneurs from whichever part of the value chain and work with them to see how we can really make impact in that space.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Martha. Thank you for answering. So I'm going to go to you, Mr. Adeyinka. Mr. Adeniji was just talking about the value chain, and
it's really in terms of a broad description, because a lot of mistakes. Move 2009, that 49 practically has about 16 tanneries operational. Between 2009 and today, it's probably less than 7 operational tanneries. And when we're operational, they're operating way below capacity. So that's like the upper part of the value chain, which basically also involves a lot of subsistence sort of operation in terms of skin collection, skin tanning, skin preservation, skin sorting, grading, because all of this invariably influences the finished leather that you get. And that's another misnomer here. The common or the usual thing is, oh, leather is good or it's wanted all over the world. Yes, Nigerian sheep skin, Nigerian goat skin. So for this, it's a competitive market. So that also affects the value chain. Then you go further into from chrome tanning, from tanning processes into actual creation of finished leather, which is also a very complicated process in itself. And similar to our crude oil industry, where you mine the crude oil, you do some basic, very basic sort of impurities removal, I won't call it processing. then ship it abroad. It's the sort of this. The input for finished leather is basically your goat sheepskin. We are also a very populated country with a lot of Muslims. There is always a glut during Salah period. You can't preserve it, so you sell it to the tannery operator, usually at a discount because you can't keep it. So the value doesn't cascade down the line. Now, for the finished leather goods producers, you need good quality leather in consistent quantities and consistent forms. Because we don't add the value to create finished leather, we export our wet blue, we export our cross leather to Italy, to Spain, where a lot of value addition is done, and they use the ones that they want and basically send us the rejects here in Nigeria, which is why you might give an order to a producer here and say, I want 1,000 pieces of lime green. He makes 200 because that is the only quantity he can find from the importer, and basically tells you, and give me another 3 months, give me another 6 months before I can satisfy your order. So these are the challenges of the value chain. And the lower end of the value chain, which is basically finished leather goods production, what you find in Nigeria today is still very artisanal. We can't escape it. We don't have what we would call industrial finished leather goods production. Yeah, we have invested in machines, we have invested in skills, but it's still it's still low end.
So that I was actually going to ask you, my next question to you, Mr. Dinka, was going to be, why are the tanneries dying? What, you know, why are the tanneries going away? Why is it dying? Is it because, I don't know, I'm just speculating, is it because the older generation were more interested in it and the younger generation are no more interested in it? You know, that's one. And then another thing, you know, when you were talking about the chrome dyeing and all that, I also wanted to ask you if the leather were being dyed properly and going through the proper tanning process here in Nigeria, like they do in Italy. Do you know, do we have the proper, I mean, I know you've talked about the environmental issues and all of that, but I mean, because those are the things that we need to find what can we do to, you know, revive it.
Okay. It's a complex situation. There are a number of factors that are responsible for the decline in the upper part of the value chain in terms of finished leather production. Now, tannery operations it's quite a sizable investment process. It's a manufacturing process, so to speak, and requires power is a challenge. Sourcing for the inputs is actually another significant challenge. If you do create a tannery and you don't have consistent supply of skins, or you don't have access to skins, then your tannery is basically moribund, which is what affected a lot of tanneries, especially those that are situated in locations that don't have access to skins. Even where you have people slaughtering huge quantities, we do consume a lot of red meat in Nigeria, quite a lot. Even where we slaughter those skins, access from where it is slaughtered to where it is utilized is a challenge. Logistic issues in Nigeria, we all understand the road networks and the rest of that. And like I said, preservation of the skins is also a subspecialty within the value chain. We don't do, possibly a combination of factors as well. The preservation methods, the knowledge of preservation is also an issue. So all of this makes it very challenging to run a tannery operation. To be fair to create a tannery operation in Nigeria, but there are numerous other factors that you have to contend with. The human resource, like I mentioned before, accessory power, logistic issues, and also these are environmentally sensitive reagents, the chemicals that you use. So there is there's a lot of business practice understanding that needs to go around operating a tannery or doing a tannery process. The sewage treatment, for instance, it's quite complex. You have primary sewage treatment, you have secondary treatment, effluent treatment plants that have to be invested in even before you think about setting up a tannery operation. And again, there's a reason why a lot of tannery operations are in the northern Nigeria, access to the raw material itself for tannery operations. So these are some of the issues.
Okay, so I have a few questions here. I believe you've answered some of them, but I'm just going to run through them so that they don't accumulate, and we can you can answer them as we're talking about in relation to what we're talking about. So someone says here that is in Nigeria, what should the relevant parties do? Does Mr. Deyinka, or I don't know who would like to answer that? Can you answer that, Mr. Deyinka? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. You mentioned relevant parties. I wanted to get a bit of clarification on.
That's what the question says. I don't know.
There's a role for everybody within the value chain. Yes, and I don't start off with the government's role. A lot of times, it's not about the government. It's about we as a people and what we're willing to do. The government, yes, creating the enabling environment, promoting access to finance issues, which I think they're doing quite well for SMEs and the rest of that. But even within the value chain itself, people, especially those engaged, need to understand the concept, and I keep saying this, of collaborative competition. Everybody has access to some level of resource. This is a sector that requires a lot of collaboration. If you shop outside Nigeria, if you go to places where the leather industry is thriving, you'll find it's a cluster approach. It's always a cluster approach. You all share resources to maximize use of equipment, maximize use of, if you're even sourcing for inputs, you actually collaborate and say, okay, look, who also wants to make this in this quantity? So everybody goes forward as a unit. And that's one of the things I'm sort of advocating from the private sector point of view. A lot of more collaboration needs to happen. You need to have a lot of more people coming together to form business membership organizations that can actually advocate with the necessary stakeholders. That for me is a start point. If we wait for the government or we wait for outside investments, it may not come in the immediate, but if we harness the resources that we as individuals have within the value chain, I think we can start having baby steps.
Great, thank you very much for that. Mr. Irabo, I was going to ask you, what do you think the industry can do to contribute majorly to the GDP of Nigeria?
Well, one thing, I listened to Mr. Denka, and he just tells you or shows how complex the industry is. And one thing that is very clear from what he had mentioned is the fact that we don't even have enough. We don't even know the size of the industry. I mean, if you go online and check and you read a lot, you'd see several estimates of what exactly of what the value of the leather industry is. I mean, some people will quote billions of dollars, millions of dollars here and there, and all that. So I think even for a start, that's probably one thing we need to get together in terms of gathering data on the value or size of the industry. How do you even know what it contributes now? How do you even know what it should contribute in the future if you can't estimate what it is now? So there are several data on import and export of raw hides and skins produced by the NBS and all that. And if you look at the latest one in Q2 2020, you'd notice it's just about 1% of less than 1% actually of what we export. Leather, raw hides and skins and leather account for just 1%, less than 1% of both export and import. That tells you that basically we still have a lot to do in terms of nurturing the industry. But in terms of your question, I think I would right now we're in a phase where Nigeria is planning for I know there's a plan, there are plans going on to set up the Vision 2050 planning document. There's also plans to establish a medium-term plans from 2021 to I think 2024 or so, or thereabout. So all these plans would basically, come into effect after the ERGP expires this year. So the big question I'm asking is, what exactly is the government's plan for the industry? Because I so much believe in government role, particularly in directing, in setting the pace and setting the direction of how an industry should go. It is when people start seeing those, whether it's in the form of policies, whether it's in form of interventions, and even seeing that the sector itself is a priority for government. Because like you mentioned earlier, some of these tanneries, would need billions of dollars of investments to put in. And for an investor, looking at it from the private sector point of view, it's not necessarily, or it's not just about whether you have the market for it. Like we've heard severally, I mean, there's a huge market for it, whether in Nigeria or outside Nigeria. That in itself would have been enough to attract investment into the country, but it tells you that it is not. There needs to be that set of sort of like direction from the government to say, this is our priority, or these are our priority industries. Leather is one of them. This is what we intend to do. These are the bottlenecks we face within the industry. This is how we intend to go about removing some of these bottlenecks in the next 2 to 3 years. When people see and you're able to demonstrate that you're really sincere about addressing some of the core issues within the industry, then I think that is one key, one key motive that can attract investment into the sector. Beyond that, issues relating to security, right? That's even very important, because we all know that some of these tanneries, most of them are located in the northern part of the country, and there's need for us to be able to guarantee security of lives and properties. We've been hearing spits of kidnapping and all that. Those things tend to slow down the pace of investment in the sector, and at the end of the day, so we will not see massive or significant investment that can actually move the industry forward. So there's so many other issues relating to ease of doing business, regulatory taxes, and a whole lot of other issues that I think we must begin to see how we can address them. Having some sort of, I like so much what the LFF is doing, bringing stakeholders together to see how we can move the industry forward, and seeing taking some of these collaborations forward beyond having this, in addition to having this type of conversation, engaging the government, the relevant ministries, whether it's the Ministry of Agriculture, Industry, Trade, and all that, and coming up with more or less like a blueprint, a plan for the industry, which would have inputs of all the stakeholders together. And I think taking those steps, I think are very crucial to grow the leather industry in Nigeria.
Great.
I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I think I muted myself. This is sort of like led me on to the next question, which is basically, I believe I have read about, I read something in the newspapers or an article that talked about the African economy powerhouse projecting to generate $1 million by 2005. I'm sorry, 2025. How do you see the market, sort of like evolving to meet this and in all of this? Because it's talking about the whole of Africa. So I'm thinking, I don't want to say we're lagging behind, but we're struggling, So what part do we play? Because I see other African countries doing better than we should be doing. And Mr. Deyinka, you're going to contribute to this as well. So I see other African countries doing better than we should be better that sort of like the forefront. We should be in the forefront of all of this because we are great consumers, of animals, like like animals like cows and goats and things like that we talked about. And I remember, Mr. Denka, you talking about, you were saying that in the north that they consume a lot of it as well, and the Muslims, every sort of like festival they have, they kill animals. So basically, it is a byproduct. But how do we play a part, Mr. Ribabo? Did you hear me? Mr.
Sorry, I lost you for a while. I guess you're
Mr.
asking how the sector can, how Africa. I heard Africa.
Yes. So basically,
Africa.
what I said was, that I read an article that said that by 2025, Africa was going to, basically they project like us making like $1 billion. And I was saying that, how does Nigeria, what parts does Nigeria play in this? And I believe that we should be at the forefront of this, being that we consume a lot of products, like, we consume a lot of animal products like goat and cow and things like that. So I was saying that, what part do, okay, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay,
it was freezing at some point, but I think I
yes,
get the sense of what you're trying, and I think
so what parts do we play as Nigerians?
Yes, I think if you look at the economy, the Nigerian economy, and even in Africa, I think Nigeria should have the largest agricultural sector in the continent, especially if you look at the fact that we are the largest economy and agri contributes, a quarter of the economy. So I think in that scale, even when you look at what Africa contributes, particularly in terms of exports, of leather and leather related products, even the raw materials itself, to what Africa exports to outside Africa to other continents, it's still very, very small and negligible, very far under 10%. But you have the likes of countries like Brazil, China, and the likes dominating the global market. So I think there's still a lot of opportunities, across all the different products, across all the different value chains for African countries to contribute. Yes, we've seen lots of success in Ethiopia in particular, of how they've been able to, grow the leather industry. And one thing to note is that if you look at Ethiopia, it was deliberate. It wasn't particularly manufacturing in a broader context of national development. For instance, they set a goal that by the year 2025, Ethiopia would become a middle-income country, and then they went further to say what are the industries and sectors that should drive this growth. What sectors are labor-intensive? What sectors have markets that what sectors have products that people need? I mean, they started from that macro level to be able to build the leather industry. And right now we've seen lots of billions of dollars of investments going into leather manufacturing, going into textile in Ethiopia, going into other related industry and manufacturing industry in the country. So I think that using that, learning from that, perhaps we can start to think from a holistic point of view. Most of the time, we often, throw money at problems and thinking that would get us, out of those problems. And we see that happening across so many industries where, there are loans to farmers. I'm not underplaying the importance of, providing funds to MSMEs, but I think we need to look at issues from a holistic point of view. How do we start improving things like skills development beyond money itself? How do we start addressing some of the logistic bottlenecks that Mr. Adeyinka raised earlier. So I think we can play that role of, taking a holistic approach on how we can develop the sector.
Thank you very much. Mr. Adeyinka, your contribution, please.
Thank you. In terms of developments across Africa and contribution or getting part of the global market share for the industry. Now, I would rather use case studies. What is more important for countries is to identify where they have comparative advantage. Nigeria has comparative advantage to some of the other African countries that are doing this thing. I'll give you an example. Botswana. Botswana has a very, very robust animal husbandry system to ensure they have inputs to feed other countries. They do not, but they do not, they're not very heavy on, we're going to do the full processing hub to finish leather. What they've decided is, okay, we have a traditional, a cultural system that encourages animal husbandry. So we have people who already understand how to raise animals, keep animals. We don't do the long grazing that typical African countries do. Long grazing meaning you graze an animal over several distances, forgetting that the animal has to feed and drink water, and that's what contributes to the robustness of the animal. Because they've recognized that that is key to whatever outputs they will bring out. So they've built that system. A lot of private sector investments have gone into cattle ranching, building huge commercial cattle ranches to ensure that when they slaughter, and they're slaughtering basically to consume, just like we are. But what they then do with the skins is they trade it to other countries. They do a bit of preservation and trade the skins to other countries. So they have a very vibrant finished leather goods market. Nigeria can do exactly the same thing. We have a cultural system, a traditional system in northern Nigeria that encourages, it's the pride of a full animal to have cows, to raise the cows. How he's raising the cows is a different question altogether, and it's just about information. Inform him that, look, you don't have to do the grazing routes, blah, blah, blah. You simply designate, which I think the government also is trying in terms of the grazing route, the grazing, the whole discussions that has been around grazing ranches and the rest of that. Again, because that is key. It is pivotal. The input is pivotal to the output. Secondly, you go to Ethiopia. The Ethiopian comparative advantage was, like Mr. Irumaba said, the government as a whole had a poverty alleviation mindset. And we have a population of not necessarily very skilled, low-level skilled workers. Where can we put them? What structure can we put them? What can we do to make the international community come and invest in this country? Which is what they did. What they did was to work on enabling the environment for international investors to bring money and finance these manufacturing firms for footwear production. And please, again, Ethiopia is not just about leather. Their focus is footwear production. They also produce a lot of synthetic footwear, simply because they have installed capacity in terms of machinery, and they've trained the human resource. That makes them stand out. Why do I say Nigeria can do both at the same time? Because this is where we were in the 80s. Anybody who grew up in the 80s was wearing Bata. Bata is a global brand that still operates till today. Leonard's, all of these were global brands that recognized the comparative advantage of Nigeria in terms of resources, skills, and the inputs. So they actually domiciled their investments here to push it forward. For the other part of the value chain, which we can get, animal husbandry, ideally, and this is government policy, people don't realize it, but finished leather goods and meat products are only prohibited import list. You're not supposed to import those things into Nigeria, which is the government's forte. It's done that, but in terms of implementing its regulations, it's also a challenge. So you find people bringing, and if you are not competitive, you find people bringing footwear made in Asia, in China, in Turkey, and all of that, synthetics and the rest of that. It's cheaper. It's cheaper, and I dare say Mrs. Olayebi can confirm that if she was actually getting her bags made in China, it would probably be cheaper, but she's driven by the passion of ensuring made in Nigeria. So it's, and believe you me, on a global scale, business doesn't thrive on passion or emotion. It's on the economics of it. Is the economics worth it? So we might be emotive about, oh, we want to support the growing Nigeria, big Nigeria brand. I don't know, I'm passionate about made in Aba and made in Nigeria. But I'm realistic about the economics of manufacturing within the Nigerian context. So these are some of the issues that I think that we can address, and they are not very difficult to address. Start with animal husbandry, provide the incentive for private sector to get involved in cattle ranching. People did get involved at some point in time, then we had cattle rustling, which some people don't realize has, well, let me not get into the politics of that, but that's where it starts from. You graze more animals, you ensure there's much more meat per animal. Not that you're increasing the number of animals, you increase the meat per animal, increase the size of each animal simply by using appropriate husbandry practices. Then you then go to the next step. Oh, let's create the environment for them to slaughter and support the business dynamics. Business dynamics meaning power generation, meaning the road networks, meaning the logistics, meaning, again, which is very important for my small SMEs who are involved, the taxation processes within the value chain. You will tax me for everything. There's no tax break. For instance, we don't produce any of the metal accessories. Every single leather product requires some sort of metal accessory. Why don't I get a concession? If I am assembling my products here, why can't the government give me some sort of tax benefit to say, okay, if I'm going to import what is not made here, specifically for a finished leather product, can't I advocate and say, okay, we get, even if it's, again, a concession, and that's what I mean by changing the incentive structure. You incentivize tanneries with an EEG to manufacture here. Why don't you incentivize the small SMEs, which is where the predominant number of people are? Simply by saying, if you produce in Nigeria, assembled whatever it is, branded in Nigeria, there's an organization that certifies that this is done in Nigeria, then you get a tax, a sort of incentive. You've created the end product, not the mid product, the end product which the consumer is going to get. So for instance, Mrs. Olayebi creates very nice bags, but they're not cheap. For the average consumer, they're not cheap. But it's because of the inputs. But people are buying because they appreciate the quality of what she does. If the government was to, if I was to incentivize, I would say for every single bag you make, I don't care the price you're going to sell it, but the fact that you're making in Nigeria, you're assembling in Nigeria, I will provide you a 10% incentive. All you have to provide is the appropriate documentation to prove to me that you've done it here. I'm not giving you cash. I'm just giving you an opportunity to reduce your cost of production, which will invariably impact on the end product itself. So these are just very small measures that we can take along the value chain. But again, let us please appreciate, I appreciate the efforts of various parts of the government in trying to get this done. This is not something that will be resolved in. This is not a 5-year, 2-year, 3-year resolution. This is a lifetime of people actually agreeing that we will get to a destination in 30, 50 years.
I pray we will. Sorry, Mrs. Olayibi. I was going to ask you, he incas things, and I could stay on here and talk to Mr. Adeyinka for hours. Believe me, he has so much to say, and everybody has wealth of knowledge. But I was going to ask you, leading on to what he had said as well, my next question is going to be to Mrs. Adeniji, but Mrs. Olayibi, leading on to what he had said about the hardware and, the leather and all of that, I was going to ask you that, do you have access to the type of leather that you want to work with, the type of material that you have access to it in Nigeria, and also the type of quality that you need? Do you get access to that in Nigeria? What you need basically for your finished product? Do you have access to everything? Even like he said, to your hardware, to your lining, to your, every part of your work. We want to be transparent because the young people, starting up their own businesses, and we need to let them know the struggles that are out there and what they have to deal with. But because it's not just about going to Mushin and knocking up a bag, literally, because everybody and anybody can knock up a bag and sell it out there for, I don't know, 10,000, 15,000. But people are actually looking for quality, and I think that's very important for a lot of Nigerians, and to also to bring in international buyers to buy off us. They want quality. They don't want mushing leather. They don't want some leather that has been in Kanu or something. I'm sorry. You know, so please, can you just tell us, I mean, how that works in terms of quality and the type of materials, you know, the different type of leather. I know that we in Kanu, I know, I don't know, Mr. Adeyinka, you could also advise. I know that they're really huge on goat skin, you know, and of course, cowhide as well, but majorly goat skin. And like you said, is being imported out of as well, you know, to international, you know, countries, and they're using it for bookbinding and other, you know, other stuff. We're not even going to get into that, but yeah. But so, like I said, Mr. Laibi, what are your views on that, and you know, what are the struggles and the challenges that you know
Thank you so much, Adito. I think that after this, we can actually put together. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. We can actually put together, what is it, you call it a white paper? Because so much has been said, and I'm really, really excited. You've talked about struggles, and Adito, you would know, because we are both in the same boat, really. Yes, and please don't knock down Mushi, because but for Mushi, we wouldn't be.
I'm not. I'm just saying we need to move beyond. We need to move beyond.
But really, at the end of the day, most leather designers, I think, gets a lot of their leathers from Mushi. I know that also if you get their leathers from Kano, they've been able to come to some kind of arrangement, because I do know that the major reason why a lot of us SMEs don't have access to those leathers in Kano is because we can't buy in the huge quantities, in the minimum quantities that is required. And so, yes, it's been a struggle, a real struggle to access leathers, but because I've been dealing, over the years, I've built very good relationships with leather sellers in Mushi Market. And so once because the way they do operate is in Mushi, they buy their leathers from huge warehouses, and it's usually owned by foreigners, I think mostly Lebanese. So when a consignment comes, they all head over to those warehouses and they pick up all the leathers. But because I've built this relationship, I get to get my leathers first, and they know exactly what I want. They know the kind of quality I'm looking for. And so I've been able to do that. But as I grew, I also realized that it was totally inadequate. And so I also headed off to places like the UK, especially. So I have suppliers in the UK and I have suppliers in Italy. But of course, that works out really, really expensive. And what I find is that we really cannot begin to talk about scaling, because we don't have we don't have those capacities, and we also cannot begin to talk of export on a grand scale, because again we don't have the capacity. And it's not just the raw materials, the leathers. There's also, of course, the hardware, which Mr. Adeyinka has very rightly said. I don't think I have ever seen any seller in Nigeria selling really good quality hardware, and I really don't blame them, because they probably bring it in and feel it's going to be way too expensive for the regular leather designer to pick up. But it's a matter of really of what way you want to position yourself in the market. And so from day one, I decided that I didn't want to buy the lower end accessories. So from your magnetic clasps to your bag feet to your zippers, we bring, for the bags that we make, we bring every single thing into the country. And I find such a shame sometimes, because as much as I want to be a 100% Nigerian brand, which I am, everything on my bags are imported, except of course the labor. I'm sure that when we put heads together, we're going to be able to win. Like you've said, you've talked about collaborations. We really need to connect those dots. We have a full understanding of what those struggles are. They are real. But I think that it's very important that we take a deep dive. I believe in starting small and experimenting. We need to look at the past to see why it has failed in order to move to the future. So I'm an advocate for experimenting, not building huge edifices. They usually, you hear of big projects being commissioned in Aba, and then you wonder why several years down the road it has failed. And I sometimes ask myself, why does it fail? I think that maybe some of the time consideration has not been taken. You build this amazing, sophisticated edifice, fully with machines, with the most sophisticated machines, and you build it several miles out of town. And then after building that, you realize, oh my God, nobody wants to leave their comfort zone. And then it starts to wither away, and the machines begin to degenerate, and that's the end of that project. So yeah, those are the realities that we face now. And I think that we need to, as there is the value chain. We need to take even from the way the cows are killed, and slaughtered, because even when the skins are being sorted, you have to sort out the skins in such a way that you can only select the ones that are fit for purpose. So at every point of that value chain, we need to be intentional about moving forward, and intentional about moving forward and looking at what is the end goal. Where exactly do we want to get with this? But I love what Mr. Adinka said about tax incentives, because we import a lot. We import a lot of what we do not manufacture. But I think that can end. And one thing I'd like to say is, as we have grown, we have built a community, a bigger ecosystem of leather designers. I don't see why we cannot eventually come together, create manufacturing hubs, and begin to be that place where foreign companies can come, because foreign companies are looking for cheaper labor. We've got cheaper labor here. There's nothing that we cannot do. I will also want to mention that we haven't really talked about training, and that is a very important aspect of this. Unfortunately, a lot of us are using non-Nigerian craftsmen to create, and I find that sad. But again, I think it's also an attitude with the Nigerian artisan who doesn't feel that they can make a meaningful livelihood from working in leather. So yeah, the struggle is real, but it's not insurmountable. It is something. It's not going to happen overnight, but once we need to start taking it one step at a time, and we will. I'm very optimistic we will get there.
Great. So fantastic. Thank you very much for that. So I was going to say, I am not knocking Mushin for, and I wouldn't, because I also get from there, but what it is for me is more the consistency and the, being able to, you meet a buyer, and a buyer wants, 100 color and the same color, not that you're trying to look for, okay, this type of red or that type of red, and you're trying to match it. So for me, the major issue is the consistency, the grades of the leather, and I mean, I don't know if I should even be saying this here, but I've had a buyer say to me before, where did you get that leather from? Was it shipped from Italy to Nigeria? I can smell it. It smells of container. Of course it didn't. It didn't smell of a container, but it was just, I guess she had probably watched some documentary, and she was feeding off all of that. So honestly, we actually need to move beyond that. But my next question, like I said, was to Mrs. Adeneji. I'm so sorry. I know that time is going. What plans do you have for us, Ma, in this leather industry? Because we're all in it together. You're with us, you are, whether you like it or not. We want to know what plans you have for us. I mean, do you have anything in the pipeline that you're looking at for the industry? I mean, because it's interesting times, and a lot can be done. And yeah, so we'd just like to find out, Ma, if there are any plans for us and on the pipeline, for us, and if you're working with any other organizations to sort of like improve our leather industry in Nigeria.
Well, I think actually I've been also been very, very fascinated with the discussion thus far, and I think it's actually it's helped me. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. We can hear you.
Kind of helped me even pull my thoughts together, and I heard a lot about, initially we're saying let's look at the value chain and let's sort of see where we are and how can we intervene or work with the value chain. And then I think it was Jinka who said, well, we need to look at it in a very holistic manner. And how do we sort of, and we talked about Ethiopia and all of that, and how do we look at it holistically? And I thought, well, actually, maybe we need to look at both, or maybe both are the different sides of the same coin. So either we're trying to, excuse me, sorry. So either we're trying to open up the value chain, or we're trying to sort of pull it all together holistically. I think what we still need to do, again, is what is the data? How do we deconstruct all of that? What is the size of the market? What are the missing gaps? What are the skills required? What kind of training is required? What kind of connection to market is required? What kind of manufacturing might do we need here to be able to compete? And so we need to actually deconstruct the entire sector and then now build it. And I think it's in the building of the sector. I know, I think Wilson said that, we shouldn't just, it's not all about funding.
Yeah.
But I would like to say, you do need funding, whichever part of the value chain you're looking at. You will need some sort of funding, be it in training, be it in skills development, be it in connection to markets, be it in access to markets, be it in access to skills or expertise. It still has to be funded. And I think that is where, again, having these kind of discussions or conversations where you have, finance, well, I know someone said, I think someone, you were the one that said private sector, but having these conversations where you have a financial institution, a development bank like ourselves, like BOI included, it's very, very helpful. And even though one of the things I also don't like is talk shops, where you just talk, and then nothing is done at the end of it. I think what's important is how do we really sort of take those baby steps or actionable steps that will move us towards our goal. So does BOI have anything specific in the pipeline? I don't know that I can talk about any specific product or program that BOI has, but I'd like to put on behalf of, I guess, BOI, put it out there that we continue to do what we know how to do. And I must say thank you to Yinka for the very, very good comments, the comments that he gave us. It really excited me because we don't get that very often. So we are there. We need to continue the conversation. We would like to, again, some people, it's not so much about the might or the big, come with this sort of multi-billion, million naira project, but how do we take those baby steps that will impact the sector? And I think that's where a BOI could really, really listen. We are very active in the MSME space. We will hold your hands. We will want to learn more about the sector. And I think I'd like to say, let the conversation continue, but let us take steps to make sure that we actually do something and we are ready to do that. Thank you.
Where is Adito? Adito? Adito, where are you?
I think you might have to take over from her.
Okay, maybe her internet has gone off or something. Okay. So maybe I will. We've definitely gone way past the time, and I'm sure that at this point, Adetong would probably just have wanted to hear everyone's final thoughts. What's going on? Okay. Okay, I'm sure she would have wanted that. I think that those sounded like final thoughts from Mrs. Adeniji. So maybe you would like, thank you so much, Mrs. Adeniji, and thank you for being here, because I know that it was quite a bit of a struggle to be here for 12. I'm so grateful. So I'm sure that we would like to hear something from Mr. Adeyinka, just your final thoughts before we round off, and then Mr. Wilson, and then myself, I guess.
Okay, thank you. Yes, we've lost our moderator. But in terms of final thoughts, so like Mrs. Adeji said, I also am a firm believer in not just talking, but doing. I've been privileged and fortunate enough to have worked in this sector for quite a number of years and been part of several programs, projects that have tried to create an impact within the sector. Now, in terms of my final thoughts, what to be done, I would throw the ball into the court of the private sector practitioners within the space, especially for those at the end of the value chain that people see, that the consumers see. The consumers don't see a tannery operation, the consumers don't see the bank financing, the consumers see the designer, the consumer sees the owner of a brand. There needs to be more collaboration, and your collaboration starts because nobody listens to a singular entity. For instance, Handbags is a singular entity. LLF, yes, it's a platform, but then people say, who are those in LLF? So there needs to be, first of all, that sort of entity that represents all the designers, the brand owners, whoever, in whatever form. So there is an entity that can be engaged by, whether it's a public sector, whether it's a private institution, whether it's a trainer, whether it's any entity, whether it's a developer partner. People want to know there is an entity that we can hold accountable and discuss with. So I would encourage, first of all, practitioners within the space to please make it a point of duty in the earliest future to create such an entity, especially an entity that speaks to the aspirations of the designers. A singular company can't effect a lot of change. Not, again, sorry, I'm using Handbags, but it comes to my head all the time. Handbags cannot change the policy of the Nigerian government. But when several Handbags come together under an umbrella and they create an advocacy pressure group that advocates with the right personnel, the right quarters, the right people, whether it's within the Senate, whether it's wherever it is, provides the right kind of information to the policymakers, then we can see traction. But if we talk about it and without that subsequent step happening, we would come here next year and still talk about it. What we've done so far is to support this sort of platforms happening in various clusters. Supported that in Aba, which is why, again, and I would say, Mrs. Adeniji, I think she's here. That's one of the reasons why BOI was able to engage, because there was an entity that spoke on behalf of the 75,000 nameless people in Aba that they could engage with. So, and that is not present everywhere there is a cluster of producers. If we all shopping, we all go abroad and you go to the high streets where they have leather producers, they're always in some sort of association. It's the development curve for industrial nations. Everybody starts at artisanal level. Everybody wants to do their own thing. Then they all realize we need to share services so that we can all survive. Then they all collaborate in a particular geographical location, and then they become a body, they then have a voice, they then institute change at policy level. We're still at that artisanal stage in Nigeria. And the reason why I'm throwing the ball at the feet of to engage other stakeholders. there's absolutely nothing stopping the brand owners from we talked about training just now. I know Mrs. Olayebi has brought in a training institution from Italy who at some point in time entertained the thought of, oh, we might have an outreach program in Nigeria. But if there is no skill, if they don't sense that there is a skill, they will go forward with that investment. The scale is knowing that there's an entity that has 1,000 brand owners on it, where if we share an information within 15 minutes, everybody gets that information, everybody subscribes, everybody knows, everybody can visit a site. Everything is all digital these days. So that platform needs to exist. That's on the one hand. On the second hand is that platform or those participants in the sector will only get the required support. And believe you me, this is not a sector that can grow homogeneously. It requires external support. Got public sector, private sector, international, whatever it is. It can't go organically on its own. You need to get that support. So it is when this platform is created, then you start engaging specific support centers. Like Mr. Wilson said at some point in time, look, people will start with, which is the government side or the policy side and all of that. I believe more advocacy is what will change the landscape. A lot of people do not know. There's a lot of misinformation, a lot of misnomers, a lot of unvalidated information out there about the Nigerian leather sector, which Mr. Wilson also alluded to. The numbers don't add up. I would tell anybody who says that, and which is why you find when you talk to private sector investors from outside and they come here and say, okay, well, this is all we've been told, this is all we've been told. But then they crunch just back of the envelope numbers and say, oh, look, there's a gap. These numbers don't add up. Whoever you can place that work at the feet of, your guess is as good as mine. But there are agencies who are responsible for this. I had an event just a week ago. I engaged NILES, which is Nigerian Leather Institute of Science and Leather Technology. I'm sure if I was to ask on this platform, if everybody realizes there is actually a revised leather policy, which is supposed to encourage change within the sector. But I don't think most people are aware. Again, this is what I mean by information communication and platforms where this information is going to be shared. The Nigerian Chemical Institute Research Technology, or whatever it is, that is supposed to guide even the regulations around reagents. Reagents you can't overemphasize the use of chemical reagents in the leather industry. You talked about getting a particular dye or a color. These are all reagent based. These are agencies that should be engaged by private sector, not just being left as, oh, a government institution that should do this. But the private sector partners know that this is pivotal to their business. So they have an advocacy body that goes to the exact agency to say, look, this is our problem. This is coming in fake. This is coming in fake. How can we collaborate to ensure this works out? So for me, that is what I think are the practical steps. Okay, let me just do a bit of a disclaimer. I work from a development point of view. I work with international development agencies that have an interest in seeing sectoral growth, but it's about scale, it's about impact. It's not about supporting one entity or one company or one institution. I want to see 100, 200 companies working together that I can support to develop a service center. Then it makes sense for me to say, okay, let's look for an investor that would support the creation of a service center, a modular service center within a geographical location that all these enterprises can access. Then it makes sense. So this will be my final thoughts. Forgive me for rambling on.
Thank you so much. I'm so sorry that I disappeared for a few minutes. Internet issue, and I had like about 3 different internet connection up here, but something went wrong. I do apologize for that. And I think, I can't hear you, Mrs. Alabi. Were you saying something?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Yes, so I sort of took over.
Yes, so I'm sorry about that.
Just 1 minute. No, thank you so much. Just 1 minute from Mr. Wilson, and then you can round it off. Yes.
Great, thank you.
Because I don't want us to get cut off.
Yes, that's fine.
Thank you.
Mr. Wilson.
Okay. Welcome back, our moderator.
Thank you.
So I will basically just briefly say that, like we've all seen that the industry has so much potential. I don't even think we should be looking for in Nigeria. I don't think we should be looking for sectors where jobs can be created. I think those things are staring at us right in our faces. Like we have so much areas that we can, get our youthful population to work, get them to be even more productive to the economy. And the leather sector, definitely is one of them, especially because the market exists, whether locally or internationally. So we have that, the opportunity to grow the sector. And I would also just touch on the fact that we need data. This is me just summarizing what I said earlier. We need to have data in terms of understanding the value of the industry, because that I think that's even should be the starting point of planning, to know what exactly what's the size of the industry, what areas do we need big type investments into across the value chain. Providing data, this is how you sell an industry to an investor. It's not just about looking at potential and looking at and being patriotic. No, because investment needs to generate returns. I would also say that lastly, we need to have that holistic approach. We need to look at the industry. We need to look at skills. We need to look at embracing technology, new ways of producing our products. I mean, we see that happening, and interestingly, COVID has even shown us that it has even fast-tracked, the embracing technology across the world, in every sphere of what we do. And I think the leather industry, we need to bring in those innovative ways of production into what we do, and also address issues of infrastructure. Lastly, I would say on the fact that we need to engage more with platforms like this. I think this is, something very interesting and very nice. Perhaps maybe we could also broaden participation, also see how we can generate, things like reports or communicate that come out of these kinds of events. And, those can serve as tools for advocacy and tools for engaging the government on different aspects of the industry. And Mr. Yinka mentioned the Institute of Leather and Science and Technology. I also stumbled on them a couple of
Mr. Wilson, we might have to run up. I'm sorry to cut you. I don't want us to get cut off. So just very quickly, because it's going to cut off in about 2 minutes or 2 seconds or something like that.
I think that's fine. I can stop here for now.
Okay, great. Mrs. Adediji had to jump off because she had another meeting. I would just like to say, let's keep the conversation going. We started something. It started, years ago by Mrs. Olaibi. Thank you very much for such a wonderful opportunity, and thank you for giving me the chance to do this. Really appreciate you. I would like to use this opportunity to thank BOI, and to also thank Providence Bank, and also to thank She Trades for all they're doing, and for every other person who has contributed to this. Thank you very much. God bless you. Thank you very much to all the panelists. Thank you for having us. God bless you.
So much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.